Hi, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, thanks for tuning in to another podcast. We certainly appreciate you guys. I hope you got the news from the prior podcasts we've launched, the CVPN Network. I think that's what it is. I'm still getting used to saying it. The Chris Voss Podcast Network. They've got 3 new shows that you can take and tune in for. There's the Chris Voss on Politics show, which is always good if you like that sort of thing. There's the gaming show for the gaming podcast. There's also Crypto Life podcast, and there'll actually be an AI one we're working on with all of our AI friends in the VR and AR sections. We'll talk about automation, all that sort of good stuff. And there might be a startup one too. It's on the slate that we're kind of playing and toying around with. So we have a lot of good things. And of course, we always have a lot of great guests and people that are on the show. Today, we have a very interesting guest, a very topical guest for some of the events that have happened over the last few months in the news. And it's Tim Rose. Tim is the chairman of the board, North America, and for Addison, let me pronounce that properly, Addison Lee Group. And it is ranked as number 1 on the LCT 50 largest fleets this year. It has about an 800 company-owned and leased luxury vehicles serving the U.S. market with 700 affiliates worldwide. Holy crap. Its projected revenues for the Americas is 100 million plus in 2018, and roughly 90 million of that amount generated in the U.S. alone, and contracts with another 3,400 self-employed drivers that use company-owned vehicles. The total Addison Lee global revenues are estimated to be about $450 million worldwide, and they own or lease another 5,000 plus vehicles and can tap a global affiliate network of 17,000 vehicles. Holy crap, this is a lot of cars. And today it employs about 2,190 chauffeurs, drivers, and employees worldwide, with 850 of those in the U.S. Welcome to the show, Tim. How are you doing, man?
Good, Chris. Thank you for having me today. Appreciate it.
Yes, great. Those are some impressive stats, bud.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's quite a lot of people and cars.
Yeah, the company's been in business over 40 years, has a great heritage, built in the United Kingdom initially, and it has a long relationship with its clients in the United Kingdom, and as well as offices in Hong Kong, and now in the U.S. They bought our company here and building upon that success for so many years in the UK.
Wow, it's interesting to see the globalness of the whole thing and how you guys operate. Now, you guys are kind of in a different field than what people think of or what people know of in the Uber and the Lyft market and things of that nature. And you guys are working on some different things to take and promote where safer riding, safer driving, knowing and understanding what you guys are doing. Give us some background as to how you got in this business first, though, so we can get to know you a little bit better. What brought you into this, and how'd you get into it?
So I'm part of a family-run business for about 30 years, and had a company called Flight Time Worldwide Transportation. It was probably in the top 5 in the LCT list, and built that up to about $70 million in revenues here in America. And in 2017, Addison Lee bought my company and merged it with TriStar Worldwide, another company they had bought, to create the Addison Lee Group for North America. So we've been in the business for many, many years, and have been very involved with the National Limousine Association, based in Washington, D.C. That is our national trade association, as well as the limousine associations of New York and New Jersey, that we work very closely with to promote safety of the riding public, as well as many of the initiatives to help all of the peers in our industry.
Now, we've recently heard about some of the topics. There was recently a huge crash with the limousine service. And I believe it was on the East Coast somewhere. And either the brakes came, I'm not even sure what really happened with it, but it probably was some kind of a blight on the PR for the limousine industry.
Yes, Chris, it was very unfortunate. And there was was about 20 people, I believe, involved in that crash who were killed. A horrific crash, and our hearts go out to the families. And the National Transportation Safety Board, who has been handling that, still has not come to a conclusion as to what caused that crash. So we don't speculate as to why it happened or what happened until we really know. All we know is that the operator was from New York. He had some issues with the New York Department of Transportation taking vehicles out of service and things like that in past history. We don't know if the vehicle was properly roadworthy at the time. We're still waiting to hear back on that, but our heart goes out to the families that were involved in it. And safety is all about what our business is all about, and it's what it's what the bedrock we build our businesses on. And so it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I remember one time I was coming between, and these instances are fairly rare. You don't hear about these much, but that one did get a lot of play in the news because of so many people that died, and there was a lot of suggestion that that car shouldn't have been on the road, and et cetera, et cetera, yeah. and that maybe the owners and operators, I believe the owner was in some other country, and the other guy who ran the place, I think he tried to take off into the airport and they caught him or something.
Yeah,
so
crazy
it's
story.
Unfortunate, but you guys are trying to work with all these different groups and make it so that there's a public awareness. People can know better what's safe, what's okay. Certainly we've heard the negative stories with Uber. Uber's almost kind of got that reputation where Bill Cosby seems to drive for them all the time, especially.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
And there's a lot of crazy things that have happened with Uber drivers. For a long time there, they really resisted getting their people fingerprinted or properly background checked, and they had a lot of bad PR issues, especially under their prior CEO. A lot of bad stuff with their PR under their original CEO, and they seem to have cleaned up a bit and everything else. But so what are you guys doing to take and kind of resolve some of those reputation issues or PR issues, even though they're kind of unique and rare?
Yeah, it's we're really in two different businesses. Our business is all about investment in the people, as mm-hmm. well as the vehicles and the safety and security of the riding public. The rideshare companies, the TNCs, as we call them, the transportation network companies or rideshare companies, Uber and Lyft, are really in the taxi replacement business, and they're in a little different business than we're in. We're working off the investment of each individual driver who they hope has the right insurance and the right background in order to do that type of work. We, in turn, have a completely different approach where we do drug testing, background checks, fingerprinting of all of our drivers. As a matter of fact, we even promote that when dealing with government entities, because we want to make sure that there aren't rogue operators who are able to cut corners. And so that's really important. But when you look at the TNC companies, one of the things that we're trying to do to differentiate ourselves, being a chauffeur transportation business, is our Be Safe Rides program with BeSafeRides.com, as well as Ride Responsibly, which is the NLA program, the National Limousine Association program. And those programs are important to educate the riding public on the difference between what they're getting. Should they hire a limousine service, or should they hire a TNC company? And if you look at some of the incidents that you mentioned, recently there was a CNN article that came out that said that the TNC companies are having over 1,200 incidents a week.
Holy crap!
Yeah. And it was actually mind-boggling, the teams that they have in place trying to track down these incidents of assaults and other things are completely, overworked, and it was a situation where it's very, very difficult for those teams to respond.
So help me understand this. Is the TNCs what you're referring to? They're the Ubers, the Lyft, these ride share companies, I think is what you call them.
Correct.
And then can they join the National Limousine Association, or is that totally two different things and they can't
No,
join?
they can't, because they're not structured the same way as you have to meet certain criteria to become a member of the National Limousine Association.
So you're working with the National Limousine Association to make sure people understand what the differences are, how to be safer on their rides. You've got the besaferides.com, and make it so that people can get some self-awareness, some education as to what the differences are between these two, and kind of know if when they take a ride, if they're going to be safe or not.
Correct, and the goal is really, to educate the riding public to do their homework, and to, the cheapest opportunity and option is not always the best, option. When especially, we have a lot of, very, very, important female travelers and female travelers. We all have sisters and wives and girlfriends and things like that, and we know how we would want them to be treated by a professional, chauffeur, instead of putting them into a TNC car, especially if they're alone. So we always tell people, travel together if you're going to do that, and just you have to be your own advocate. You have to, safety is the number one thing, and you have to make sure that you keep that in mind.
So for companies, cars, and drivers that are working with you guys, the National Limousine Association, they can join there. Is it more of a business setup where, there's a company that's there, they own the cars, they run, all the background checks of their employees, they have a kind of more tighter control over those employees and drivers, whereas the TNCs are more of like, they have an app, and then you some Joe goes, I want to drive this week, and drives people around. You have sometimes have to be concerned about either the professionality of that person, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's really, you're right. It's about the investment. We have significant investment in the vehicles, the training, the background checks, the drug testing, and it's ongoing, the fingerprinting and things like that, DMV records. And it's ongoing, and it's annual, and it's consistent. And as you mentioned, what we did was to bridge the gap from a technology standpoint. Is that many of our companies, like our company, has a fantastic app for our travelers to use, and it complements our service. So that the nice thing is you can call for a car for if you want to make a reservation over the telephone. You can make one on our online booking tool, or you can use our mobile app. And, that's how we've bridged the gap with our clients, because that's really one of the things that the TNCs have been successful at. Is the legacy taxi cab companies didn't have that good technology. And that's where they, ended up,
they really got their edge on that.
Yeah, correct. And so now we all have bridged the gap as it relates to technology. And there's no investment there. Like you said, they sign up online and they mail you an iPhone, and you're in business. Have at it.
You just put the little tag in your window.
Yeah.
I know what you guys are going through, because I had this years ago. We owned a courier company that did deliveries, and much like FedEx and everything else. And at the time, we were regulated by a state group that actually oversaw everything when it came to transportation. This is back in the Clinton era, where the trucks were still regulated, before deregulation of the trucking industry. But we had to go through, we had to get approved and apply, and we had to pay just outrageous car insurance for our vehicles and stuff. And we had to comply with all sorts of rules, laws, checks, audits, and everything to make sure that our cars were safe on the road. and that we were, of course, operating as a legitimate, well-oiled business. And
Absolutely.
every now and then we'd find these people that would just be, some guy would have decided to start delivering packages or something to cut in on everyone's business. And I remember turning a few of those people into to the service, and the Utah Highway Patrol would have to go out and take them down. And I remember one time I was on the phone with him, and he's like, well, I understand what the big deal is. And it's like, well, or what it was, he had to go get licensed after we turned him in. And he's like, I can't afford to operate this way because the insurance is too expensive. It's like, well, the insurance is there for a reason, for if you kill somebody or run somebody down with the company vehicle. There's a reason why this is there.
Absolutely.
And of course, our cars, had to pass tighter inspections than you would for just some Joe running his car. And we've all heard the stories. I mean, there's even drivers have been attacked, and vice versa. And I think in the pre-show we were talking about, I think there was a guy you mentioned recently where some Uber driver or something ended up killing people between rides or something.
Yeah, in Kalamazoo, Michigan, he was killing people in between rides, and
wow.
He was just recently convicted, and
wow.
Yeah, so we think the complete lack of supervision, is the biggest issue. And what does that mean? What it means is that when we hire a chauffeur, that chauffeur comes in for an interview, a background check, drug testing, training. If at any point during that process we see that somebody is not properly qualified or has the temperament to deal with, the riding public that we're comfortable with, then they won't continue. And that's really the key. Even if you have a clean record and a background check, the clear lack of supervision is part of the problem.
And they probably have to come in the office, and you get to see them and
spend several weeks in a training class. And then pass a test. So that clear lack of supervision by the rideshare drivers is really the issue. And they have 96% turnover, and so they're in a situation where they need to get people on the road fast, because as fast as they're coming in the front door, they're going out the back door. And that's really the key. And so that's why we spend a lot of time and effort training them, paying them, so that this way they make a proper wage. And that the key for us is consistency with the passengers. We want the customers to come back and use us again and again. And that's really why we spend so much time and money on it.
I remember years ago I got into an Uber for an event in LA, and I got in and I go, okay, yeah, we're going, they know they're supposed to know where you're going. And the guy goes, well, how do you get there? I go, I don't know. You're the professional. That's why I'm paying you. Like, this isn't something I'm supposed to be doing. This is something you're supposed to do. I believe it was a black car too. I was like, don't you have like Waze on your phone or something? Some sort of mapping system to figure, well, oh yeah, I probably can do that. You're just like, come on, dude, you drive. Although you can say it the other way too. I was in New York, and a taxi picked me up, and I said I want to go to the AT&T store that's downtown in Times Square, and he's like, I don't know where that's at. I'm like, you don't know where Times Square is? At the AT&T store. And he did know where Times Square was, but he didn't know where the AT&T store. And it's this giant store that has this. It's right in the center, and it's got this giant AT&T sign. I'm like, how do you not know where that is? I mean, like, I can see it over there. I don't live in your bloody city. So definitely people that are trained really well is a big deal and can make a difference. And
no question.
And like you say, the quality of it. I mean, I was astounded. I had some friends that early picked up on the Uber thing, and they're just like, I'm going to go drive tonight. So I just flip on the app and say I'm going to drive. And I'm just like, really? That's how it works? This seems really cavalier.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It seems really cavalier. And it was interesting to watch the rise. My friend Robert Scoble was actually in a car at our other friend Leo Lemire at a France. There's a France conference that he used to put on every year, and he was in a car with I forget the CEO's name, but him and his partner that started Uber, and he had on his lap the gal from Yahoo who left Google, who was the CEO of Yahoo for a while. I forget her name too. I'm forgetting everyone's name on a Friday. The whole brain's just gone. And he pitched, he didn't really pitch him. He wasn't pitching him, but he pitched him the idea of Uber, and it was still in the idea phase at that point. Yeah, my friend Robert Scoble, yeah, you heard it all from the beginning when they were pitching it at La France, Lamarck, Lapark. I can't. I'm losing it in my old age. But it was really interesting to watch that whole thing evolve and grow from all of our time in Silicon Valley and tech, and watching it come out. And you're just like, what are you doing? And then my experience of owning a courier company and knowing the regulations of the industry and seeing them skirt around it with the app. It was really, I mean, I'm just like, I don't think that's legal. And they had to work pretty hard to get around the laws that were put in place so that someone couldn't do what they were doing. But yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like you said, we spend a lot of time, effort, and money to make sure that everything from our customer standpoint is is professional, and the training is all in place, and the safety is all there, so that and then really we're working on educating the writing public on those differences, and that's so important.
Yeah, it was Marissa Mayer who sat on Robert Scoble's lap. She was still with Google at the time, and they got into a taxi cab, and Louis, I forget his name. He has a thing in the thing, and they literally were talking about it, that it was still in the idea concept phase. So watching it evolve and hearing the stories firsthand from our Silicon Valley friends, it was just interesting how the whole thing got built. And then of course the problems it had, and I think they kind of cleaned up their act a little bit once they got a new CEO, but there does seem to still be problems where there's, crazy stories happening every now and then in these cars. Yeah, I've had some interesting experiences as well. Sometimes they're better than taxi cabs. Like here in Vegas, the taxi cab business is really rough. Mm-hmm. Even then, the
taxis have done a great job of bridging the gap, I think, in many places, because now they have the apps as well. Mm-hmm. And you got to remember, they have significant investment in as well. In many cases, whether they bought a medallion or they bought a franchise or whatever, the cities regulated those, so it made it very difficult for the taxi cab companies to compete in many cases. But now a lot of the cities are changing their regulations to help the taxi cab companies to compete as well.
Yeah, I know they have the taxi cabs now have an app as well, and mm-hmm. they kind of have a general one. They all got together and they built the general one so mm-hmm. it can compete with Uber and Lyft and all these other services. And Vegas, we had our times with them too. I mean, Vegas shut them down when they first tried to muscle in here. And I think it took them a year or two, and they had to get some special legislation to get them around it. And even then, they fought tooth and nail. But you can see why with some of the stories that have gone on here in Las Vegas. The regulations for the taxi and limo services are huge, because you can have somebody who comes here to have a good time. They get a little too drunk because it is Vegas or whatever, their poison is. Mm-hmm. And leave a $10,000 winnings from, a craps table in the back of the car, and the, in any other city or wherever the taxi cab driver might keep that. But they actually have like these huge police forces here in Las Vegas that will do stings, and they'll have like a fake cop that will pretend he's really drunk, and he leaves a wad of his money behind in the car. And then of course, if the driver doesn't report that in a timely mm-hmm. fashion, they do a sting on it. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on with the regulations for these companies to make sure that they're held to the highest levels of integrity, and protect the thing. Because here in Vegas, we don't want to burn tourists, man, because that's bad for business. We want them coming back and giving us all their money some more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to ruin tourists in this business. So
Vegas has some great limousine operators too. Some really large, great limousine operators do a great job with for all of the big events there. With especially even for the Consumer Electronics Show, it's world renowned about how many limousine transactions are done there for the big show, and it's the operators out there do who are our affiliate partners do a fantastic job.
Yeah, one of my friends is Gary Shapiro, who's the CEO of CTA and CES Show, and in fact, we had him on the podcast a couple weeks ago, right before the show, and I complained to him a couple years ago about how they need more taxis and more service for the CES show, and I think they resolved some of it. It's just such a hugely growing show to try and keep up with, but having professional stuff is really important. So tell me more about the website, the BeSafeRides.com.
So the BeSafeRides.com was an initiative that our Limousine Association put together to educate the riding public on the differences between chauffeured transportation versus taxi and TNC companies, and it was all about explaining to them about the investment in hiring, background checks, drug testing, and ongoing training of chauffeurs, and the investment all of these companies have, as well as in the equipment and the vehicles and the insurance limits and everything else to make sure they're protected, as well as licensing from the states and municipalities that are involved wherever they travel. And that's really the key. We won't, put people in anybody's vehicle that's not properly licensed, insured, with a fully vetted and trained chauffeur. And so that's really what it's about. And in addition to that, it shows on there some of the information about some of the incidents related to the TNCs and some of the horrific complaints that have been received by a lot of the different agencies, and it's really about differentiating it. And so when that buyer is trying to discern what type of service that they're looking for, so that they have we want to just make sure that they're aware of the options. Sometimes the cheapest option is not always the best option.
You certainly find that rule out in life. So I imagine you guys have a lot less a lot lower incident rate than these TNCs.
Incredibly, low, incident rate, and again, it's all about supervision. We have 24-hour days, 7 day a week, full customer service wrapper. Well, what that means is, we have the call center. We have the car control dispatch center that's monitoring the chauffeur's whereabouts at all times, as well as their on-time performance. And in addition to that, they're being monitored by our chauffeur services department based upon if there's any complaints from passengers, whether the complaint is on the app, whether it's via the telephone, whether it's via email, instantaneous responses to clients, so that they don't go into some gigantic black hole of 1,200 serious complaints a week. It's not what we're about.
And then of course you've got inspectors that inspect your vehicles, check them, probably surprise inspections.
Correct. Our own mechanics
show up
that
and
maintain them
from the government. It's and the National Safety Board you're dealing with the feds. You're dealing with people that you don't want to screw around with, because they can really make things unhappy for everyone if you don't follow the rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's see. I think we covered most of some of the different things there. So you guys are going to keep rolling along, and they're going to be the TNCs are going to be separate from you guys, and the public should just be aware I guess the best way for the public, if I'm listening to this show, if I want to know what the difference is and kind of educate myself more, what's a good way to do that? Go to that website.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Be Safe Rides is.com is one of the ones that we put together for the Limousine Association of New Jersey. The National Limousine Association also has Ride Responsibly, where Pamela Anderson is our national spokesperson as it relates to that safety and security of passengers. And really, it's about a lot of she advocates for how many females have been attacked. And about how do you not become a victim? And what we're trying to do is educate people so that they don't become a victim, and it's crucially important, we think.
Yeah, one of my friends, she has a company called WanderSafe, and they make a kind of anti-attack, anti-rape device. And one of the stories that she had was a gal went over to France, and she got in what she thought was a taxi, and the taxi driver took her off, and here she is, she's in another country, took her off into the woods and tried to rape her. And I guess she got away, but here she was in this foreign country, doesn't speak the language, and it was just crazy. And she thought she was getting into a car that was a legitimate operated thing. So definitely being aware of what you're in, and certainly those families that lost a lot of loved ones. In fact, I think the sad part about that big limo crash was that a lot of those people were family members and husbands, wives, and relatives. I mean, you're wiping out a whole wedding fleet. Certainly if you're thinking about getting married or any of those different things where you're going to be in a huge limo with a bunch of people, you may want to really think about the investment you're making, because something like that happens, you can wipe out a whole family if you're not careful.
No question. Yeah. And it's all about being your own advocate.
Yeah,
for sure.
Most definitely. And you just never know too. I mean, there's lots of rules that you guys have to follow. One of the big things that happens here in Las Vegas is people drink and start partying before they get to Vegas when they come from California. And that's where you see some of the weird stuff happen. Like, I think one time we had someone, I think the limo driver was drinking or something and partying with the people in the limo. I'm not even sure if it was a working limo. It might have been a private one, but it rolled out in Baker. And when those things roll, they just keep rolling. And so it could be a really dangerous business. You think you're in a big giant vehicle and you're like, oh, I'm surrounded by a lot of steel, I should be okay. But sometimes those end up worse when bad stuff happens. So definitely be in a vehicle that's very safe, that has inspections, that the brakes are going to work.
Oh yeah, no question. And again, that's all public, record as well. So some of those companies, as far as their safety violations and things like that are public record. So that it's a good opportunity for you to to be your own advocate when you're doing
do your research. Like All right. Well, anything more we should know, Tim?
No, I think it's all about trying to educate the riding public, Chris, and we sincerely appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
All right. Well, everyone, check out the website. Give me the website one more time, if you would, Tim.
BeSafeRides.com.
BeSafeRides.com. Everyone, check it out. Make an investment. Always remember, the cheapest way isn't always the best. If you've ever bought furniture at IKEA, you probably learned that valuable life lesson. Have you ever tried to put something together from IKEA too, as well? But definitely protect your loved ones, protect your investments, and know what sort of cars you're getting into. Thanks to Tim Rose for being with us today. We certainly appreciate you guys for tuning in, our audience. Be sure to go to youtube.com/Chris Voss and hit that bell notification so you get all the notifications for all the shows we're doing. Be sure to go to the cvpn.com to see all the Chris Voss podcast shows on the Chris Voss Podcast Network. Well, we have some third-party shows that we'll be bringing on there as well. We certainly appreciate you guys for tuning in. Be sure to refer the shows to your friends, and we'll see you next time.